One of last year's most popular games, Dispatch, is finally out on the Nintendo Switch 1 and 2, and... Wait, what? Oh, the Switch version of Dispatch has been censored. Dispatch came out in episode batches starting on October 22nd, 2025 for PS5 and PC, and its invincible-like aesthetic, charming characters, voice acting by known people, tribute to superhero culture, and engaging gameplay and story quickly caught people's attentions, and the game was nominated for Best Debut Indie Game at the Game Awards 2025, so needless to say, it's a very popular game. So Dispatch is a game made for a mature audience, and it is known for getting a bit graphic at times and showing some intimate parts of characters and a few other mature themes. The PC and PS5 versions of the game have options that let you toggle profanity censorship and visual censorship on and off. The main issue is that the Switch version only allows you to control the profanity censorship, but it lacks the option to toggle the visual one. As a result, if you play it on the Switch, you will have some black bars appearing in some scenes and muted sounds during specific moments. Although the swearing, which is a lot, is still present in the game. So the problem is not that it has something new, but rather that the option to toggle some things was removed and censored by default. Now, this could have been less bad if people knew in advance that this was going to be the case. However, for about a month, there has been a slightly discounted pre-order of the game. The digital artwork that was already available had some level of censorship, although seemingly only in the American version, but no information whatsoever that the game was going to have such censorship. Expectations for the game were different. The eShop page only has a disclaimer at the very bottom that some content from Dispatch's original version has been modified, which could mean anything, such as small changes to make it compatible with the Switch. So people only found out about this when the game came out. For an incredibly popular game like Dispatch, players have expectations about this title, and the lack of disclosure about these changes is alarming and confusing to say the least. As you can imagine, many people, especially those who were waiting to try the game for the first time on the Switch, were severely disappointed. Several posts on Reddit and X/Twitter show users are asking for refunds and deciding to buy the game on different platforms. Refunds with Nintendo are not a standard practice that you hear about often, but it seems some people are managing to reach out to customer support and get it sorted. The people at Eurogamer have reached out to AdHoc Studios asking about it and received the message that different platforms have different content criteria and submissions are evaluated individually. And we worked with Nintendo to ensure the content within the title met the criteria to release on their platforms, but the core narrative and gameplay experience remains identical to the original release. 2 days after the release, Nintendo replied to IGN that Nintendo requires all games on its platforms to receive ratings from independent organizations and to meet our established content and platform guidelines. While we inform partners when their titles don't meet our guidelines, Nintendo does not make changes to partner content. We also do not discuss specific content or the criteria used in making these determinations. And then finally, the AdHoc team released an official declaration on their Discord, which is lengthy and I'll link to the full version quoted by Eurogamer below. But in summary, 1. The AdHoc team initially assumed that it was okay to publish the game as it was on Nintendo because of games like The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk are there, but this was not the case. 2. They took ownership of the tiny disclaimer at the bottom of the page that made it seem like they were trying to hide this modification. But it was a mistake where they added this to the disclaimer field instead of the about the game field when publishing the game. This has now been fixed and you will see another message high up in the eShop page. By the way, I also noticed that the note at the bottom went from a generic sentence to explicitly include the word mature. And 3, they acknowledged the frustration of fans, apologized, and are already working with Nintendo to update their game and remedy this as much as they can, but this is a lengthy process that may take weeks. However, there's more to it. It seems that in Japan, games like Cyberpunk have a different version that is heavily censored to comply with the country's regulations for console games, since the responsible organization CERO is much more strict than the ESRB or PEGI when it comes to nudity. In fact, the Japanese version of Dispatch for the PS5 came out seemingly on the same day as the Switch version worldwide, and it's the same censored version. So, was this a decision made from AdHoc then? This theory has been gaining traction, and if that's the case, why not just release this version in Japan only and keep original one for the wide market, since that is possible, as we have seen with Cyberpunk? I was one of the people that immediately thought this would have been a demand from Nintendo given their history of making odd decisions, and I say that as someone who likes Nintendo, but even that would be odd considering that 1. The game is already rated 18. 2. Parental controls exist. 3. All the swearing in the game, which is a lot, is there. 4. They allow heavy horror games such as Outlast. 5. We have games with mature content like The Witcher 3. 6. They even allowed Cyberpunk's famous intimate part slider and a lot of other uncensored things in that game. 7. Just go to the eShop and you will quickly see tons of slop or questionable games like these. But the thing is, we don't have the full picture, but it looks like the AdHoc team is working to fix the situation. A separate Japanese version apparently could have prevented all of this, but once again, we don't know everything and maybe this will be fixed later on, at least partially. Another topic related to the release are the bugs. They seem mostly minor, but a few players have raised issues in the official Dispatch Discord. In my playthrough, I spotted 3 of them, all related to dialogue. For example, in this one scene where one of the options just said false, and I had to do some searching to find out what the actual text was supposed to be. In this other one of the dialogue seems to have appeared a bit early and triggered an incorrect one right after, and in this example, we have a little bit of code leaking into the text itself. The team is actively working on releasing patches and working with the community to fix everything in their Discord. To be honest, as a software developer myself, I can relate to that and I understand that business practices often get in the way of developing the right way, such as having tight deadlines. So some solidarity with the devs on this one. Been there. Please don't forget they're a small company doing a great job even though they have limited funding. With that said, what exactly was removed from the experience? There are a lot of scene variations, so I probably missed some optional moments, but based on my playthrough, here's a breakdown trying to minimize spoilers as much as possible with images which are cropped and out of context. But there may inevitably be some level of minor spoilers, so if you just want a summary, skip to the next timestamp. Characters, both important and secondary ones, have brief moments of partial or complete nudity. There are 2 jokes in episode 4. One is an optional joke, which because of the censorship I could only partially understand it. Another one has to do with something being printed, which I had to look it up because I completely failed to understand what it was. But to be fair, this one was very minor and brief compared to the previous one. Middle fingers, which happens in both key and optional segments in different episodes. Though funnily enough, I noticed at least 2 instances where these were not blocked by black bars, so what happened here? One of the most notable cases is a spicy scene which had character voices muted regardless of your profanity options and some black bars. These instances of censorship happen in most of the 8 episodes of the game, though some are extremely brief, with episode 4 seeming to be the most affected. Episodes 5 and 6 did not have any censorship that I could easily find or remember, which is pretty good considering the unforgettable boss scene which has some violent moments and that is preserved. All violence and swearing is apparently untouched. And these were all the ones that I caught. Have I missed something? Please let me know in the comments and you will find any missing ones I find out about in the description. So, how bad is this version? In terms of performance, nothing to complain. It runs well, but it's not a graphic-intense game anyway. Most of the censorship were small details, and the bugs I found were not major. But Dispatch is a short game that sets a very specific type of tone that I don't really get from other media, so whenever I had noticed the censorship, it was a bit distracting or even straight up odd when the sound was muted. There were 2 brief humorous moments, one of which I could only partially understand and another one that I had to look it up because I couldn't understand what was going on. So, during moments like these, I couldn't help but feel that I was playing a slightly limited version of the game and not really getting the full creative experience that the developers envisioned. It's not about seeing or hearing certain things, but rather that this is about a creative vision not being fully realized in this platform. Sure, the game is still so good and luckily the censored scenes only amount to a small portion of the game. But this is not exactly what was advertised and it feels like the inferior version considering you have a bit more options in other platforms, so I understand people being mad about it. In fact, I initially asked for a refund and I was planning to play on Steam, but I decided to keep the game only so I could make this video. To sum it up, is it worth it? Well, it looks like that if you would have played the game with the censored options toggled on in other platforms anyway, for whatever your reasons could be, it seems that the experience would be similar to the Switch's option. Not to mention that this is still an incredible game that is now available on a hybrid console and all of its perks. And honestly, the censored scenes are not that many, and the game still shows all the fight-related content and keeps all of the dialogue. But if you would rather play this in all its glory and everything that was planned to be there to fully create the narrative and tone that the developers of the game envision, then be aware that the Switch version might not give you everything. To me, it's not a major downgrade because the censorship happens in specific moments and I had an amazing time with it, but it's still a downgrade and I would have preferred to play without it. So if the Switch is your only platform, you can still absolutely enjoy the game as it is, but just be aware that you are playing in a version with a little less. There's a chance this will change in the future, but for now, the Switch version of Dispatch lacks an option that other platforms have. With that said, this is one of my favorite recently released games, which I had a lot of fun with, and I look forward to seeing more from AdHoc. But that's just how I feel about it. What about you? Let me know in the comments what you think. But this was not the only controversial decision in the gaming world lately. Check out our website in the description for other cool geeky stuff, and stay tuned for an upcoming video covering the summary of the major news in the geek industry coming soon. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to like and subscribe for more. This is Danger Geek Labs, and I'll see you soon.